Welcome to Inclusive Cyber, your front row seat to understand how a diverse mix of voices is not just necessary, but essential to protect our most sensitive computer networks and personal data. I'm your host, Danny Magallanes, and through my podcast, we shine the spotlight on the heroes and trailblazers from every corner of society who are redefining the diversity, equity, and inclusion frontier. Every episode is a step towards a cyber community that's as varied as it is united, where everyone has the keys to unlock their potential and the power to protect our digital world. Join us on this journey where every listen, every share, every dialogue inches us closer to this new reality. In this episode, I'm joined with Guillermo Saenz, who is in the IT marketing space, but adds to the continued dialogue of the lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion in cybersecurity. I met him through contacts from the Latino Leadership Institute here in Denver. As I mentioned before, we need to look outside of our industry to make it better, and Guillermo educates us by leveraging analogies on how the lack of DEI in IT and in cybersecurity is creating music nobody wants to listen to. We also dive into helping SMBs be more mindful of the cybersecurity threats that can lead to financial ruin. Lastly, we talk about AI, because seriously, whoever is not talking about AI is already behind. Please subscribe, like, and share via your favorite social media platforms. Hope you enjoy the episode. Guillermo, I appreciate your time and joining me in discussing a lot of things around IT, cybersecurity, and obviously diversity, equity, and inclusion. How are you this morning?
Danny, thank you for having me. I'm really excited for this talk. The last couple conversations that we've had really sparked a lot of ideas and thinking. So I'm really excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, the feeling is mutual, Guillermo. Let's go ahead and just start off with kind of your background, where you've been, where you're going, and where you're currently at.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, like my overall career started in music. And I worked in the music business for many years. Like everything, it evolves. And it evolved into marketing, and you learn things and you find opportunities, gaps. And it evolved into marketing. And now I'm in the IT space, building marketing strategies in the channel system, in the ecosystem for different brand. And a lot of the focus is security nowadays. It has opened my eyes into the needs of our community, and community is everything. And the digital space and the world that we're living in now is changing the game. I see the need not just for Latino business growth, which is where I really started, but it's also business resiliency, is making sure that you can withstand a disruption like we had in COVID. And we saw Latino businesses really do and adapt great to it. But now we face even bigger threats because it's a threat that's coming at you all the time, in this digital era.
Yeah, you mentioned some excellent points there, but I want to pull the thread a little bit on your music career. I didn't know that about you. So were you in a band? Did you play an instrument, or were you behind the scenes producer?
I started as a musician. I started as a saxophone player. I wanted to be a drummer, but in sixth grade, I couldn't say percussion. Saxophone was what came out of my mouth, and I love it. I still have my sax. I just got it repadded. It changed my life, man. And that led me to audio engineering and working in a studio, which led me to being on the road with a band. And that led me to moving to Nashville to work at a talent agency and learning how to represent artists and build events. And that's where the marketing really started to come to life. It was not just about finding bands jobs. Because I was in the Latin music industry, It was also helping promoters promote the show. They were non-Latino a lot of times. And it was like, okay,
Yeah.
you've sold me on this band, but I don't know this music. I don't know the radio stations. So I found myself setting up their entire marketing for the event. And I met a mentor in Nashville, and I'm telling him everything I'm doing. And he says, and you're doing all of that for free? And man, that changed everything, because to me, it was just to drive value to the promoter. He said, and that's great, but you're helping them make money. And that comes with the value. And he really taught me how to value my expertise in ways where it was worth something to someone else. It wasn't just a favor you were doing for somebody.
Mhm. I love that, especially the saxophone. So just a quick tangent. I was in fifth grade and I got into orchestras. A couple of buddies, and it wasn't because I wanted to do orchestras, because we were able to get out of class. So I did viola, but my passion, and I don't know where it came from. I remember I have older siblings that obviously listened to the 80s music, Duran Duran, Van Halen during that time. But saxophone, I loved it. I just loved the sound of that. But my school didn't allow, if you started with orchestra, you couldn't go into band. So they stopped that interest or whatever passion that I had with that instrument. It didn't go anywhere. The school didn't let me do it there.
Oh,
But no, I love that. I love that background. We could definitely talk about this more some other time. Other things that you mentioned in your introduction about IT and Latino owners. During our previous, you brought up the fact that how do we bring awareness to Latino owned businesses when it comes to not only IT, but then the maturation of IT, or what IT should be doing, not only creating efficiencies for the business, but protecting that from the ever growing cyber threat landscape.
I feel that inherently Latino businesses have embraced IT as a tool. And COVID was an accelerator to that. You had to, if you had a restaurant, now you're shifting from dine in to order online. And so a lot of things moved really fast during that time period, but it just became a band aid. Now it's really thinking about technology as a strategic asset for your business. Um, and using it also to protect the most important thing that you have, and that's your data. While you may not think you have valuable data, your data is it's sought after. And what would you do if you just lost access to your computer systems for 3 weeks? Like, could you survive? What does that mean for your customer trust? What does that mean for your sales? What does that mean for your bottom line? And it's really getting business owners to realize, while it's a tool, it can be weaponized against me. And how do I set myself up to really bring this culture of security and resiliency for my business?
Excellent points, and especially that needed education, right? The typical response that we hear from small business owners: nobody's going to target me because I'm small potatoes. I have nothing of value. But it's understanding that, okay, maybe the data might not be valuable to them. And just like what you mentioned, what can you do if you can't access that data for 3 weeks or even longer? There was a piece several years ago, I think in the New York Times, where it was a psychologist and she had her practice and she got hit by ransomware, and all her client data was on her laptop and it was gone or inaccessible. And she had to pay because she had no other backup. She had everything there. bringing out that awareness and educating small business. And especially, it seems Latinos are obviously focused on the business, and they might gloss over when it gets to cybersecurity or even IT and how to protect your data. It's all about operations. But yes, we get it, but you still ultimately need to increase that. What could be some, I guess, avenues on increasing that education with Latinos business owners to say, hey, you really need to focus, okay, not 100% of your time, but some time to protect your IT infrastructure and your data.
It's doing what you're doing, Danny. It is getting the word out about the importance of it and doing it in a way that resonates with them. Technology has its own lexicon, it has its own language. And when you're talking to try to build awareness to somebody that hasn't thought about it before, you have to be able to bring that down to something that resonates so that they can feel the need for it. Store owners put alarm systems on their storefronts. You have to do this. You have to think about it the same way you would your physical building or your physical assets. Now those physical assets have moved into a digital and virtual space. So how do you what are the alarm systems? What's the guard dog that you're having now to alert you that there is something wrong? And it really is bringing it down to a level that's conversational, that's understandable, and gets business owners to really feel that need. It's easy to be overwhelmed by it. You know, if you Google cybersecurity for my business, every vendor, every partner, there's a report from everyone out there. So how do you sift through that information? And it is going to leaders like you and what you're doing to say, Danny's out there. He has the experience. He has the credibility. I don't have to read 1,000 reports. I can listen to Danny and I can get it. I understand it. And it really is about making it resonate. In marketing, we say deliver the right message to the right person at the right time. And if that message isn't right, it doesn't matter if it's the message, but if it is using $1 words when a nickel word would suffice and really tell the story, then you're not doing anybody a service.
I love the fact that we need to bring, the verbiage that we use to describe technology and cybersecurity. I met somebody yesterday at a conference here locally in Denver, and when I think they were talking about, they used to be a 911 operator or kind of behind the scenes. And when she would say that, everybody had all these questions. They're like, oh my God, I could talk to you for hours. But then now she's in cybersecurity. And when she mentions that, they're like, oh, okay. And then they just walk away. So there is this inherent fear. And I think that's on us. Being in the industry, we put these requirements, these technical requirements, to be more specific, that in order to gain access, and all these acronyms too, on all these security tools and functions, throwing all these acronyms. But another quick story for one of my buddies, she was shifting to cloud assurance. She said, I don't really know what that is. And my boss, we're not really connecting. And I definitely want to get your perspective on this. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but using AI, ChatGPT. At the time, I barely started using it. I'm like, hey, why don't you ask ChatGPT, can you explain cloud assurance to a 6-year-old? See what it says. It was able to spit out a long article, if you will, and now her and her boss are able to communicate. One example that I use is analogy. Pretend you mentioned it, your security system, your cameras, right? It's very similar in the network environment for your computers. You're putting up these virtual walls, these virtual guards, if you will, or locks to protect your data. Definitely resonated with everything you said there, Guillermo. I want to bring in the diversity, equity, and inclusion aspect. And what is the nexus in your experience on why that's important and how the nexus between IT, cybersecurity, and DEI?
Danny, I think about DE and I through my musical lens. That music has been so ingrained in me. And imagine hearing your favorite song and it's going through the speakers and you're just really feeling it. Now, imagine just that favorite song. And in my case, imagine it just being one saxophone. No harmony, it's just one saxophone playing every part. Man, that would be so monotonous, and you probably couldn't listen to it for more than 30 seconds, if that. That's what DE and I really is, man. Like being able as a musician to sit with different
Mm.
instruments, different people, knowing that everyone has a voice, everyone at that round can talk to each other even without knowing the language, your verbal language, because you can sit down and pick up music, pick up the rhythm, pick up the key, the tone, the emotion of it. And that's why having diversity in everything we do, but especially in technology, so critical. This world is not a monotonous world. There are multiple different actors, different personalities playing in it. And if you're in a session, you sometimes, and you've seen this, one person can dominate a conversation. And if you're talking cybersecurity, that leader is going to sway you, and groupthink falls into play here. All of a sudden, everyone's nodding and everyone's saying, yes, this is how we should approach this problem. I don't have the experience that Danny has, or Guillermo, or anyone else in that room has. And we can pull from life experience because we bring a different perspective. We bring a perspective from other fields, from a creative analogy standpoint. Let's say we could talk about ransomware, compare it to what Secuestro Express was in Latin America years ago. Kidnap Express. It was no longer about multi-million dollar kidnappings. It was very quick hijacks and taking you down to the ATM or asking your family, not for $1 million, it was for $1,000.
Mm.
When you bring that perspective to the table, you get people to shift their thinking on what ransomware is and how you can devise ways to combat it. So it is important to have those different perspectives, because it's very easy in a room filled with very smart people. Everyone just falls in line, and we can bring a different level of understanding and help people reimagine, even if their solution is right. But how do you reimagine the approach? How do you reimagine the audience? How do you reimagine how you communicate it, how you tackle it? That's what really is important in the space now, because it applies to every level of business from enterprise down, and you can't tackle it with just one view.
Guillermo, everything you said is just amazing. And there's some nuggets that I want to go a little bit deeper on. But the whole music analogy, love that. I'm going to start using that. The diversity of instruments, you're going to make a masterpiece. In regards to different voices and even marketing, just like when you were doing your music and marketing Latino music in Tennessee, that a lot of people didn't understand that. And you were that subject matter expert there. I kind of love bringing that and using that as an analogy as well, because we bring in those unique experiences, perspectives, resiliency. Everybody, in this world has that, right? And they've been able to potentially conquer things in their lives that we can bring in to help us solve our biggest challenges here in cybersecurity. I remember one former leader in the bureau, he would go down to the analyst level. He's like, all right, tell me the real story. Because at the top, everything is perfect, rainbows and sunshine. I need to know what's really going on because I don't know if it's that groupthink or middle management doesn't want to bring in bad news. How do we get, I guess, a seat at the table to have those discussions? Because I would argue we're not even being invited to the table, right? What could be some ways to increase that diversity within our IT or profession?
So that does fall on leadership, right? The leaders need to be committed to that. And it's very easy to put together a committee or to create a checkbox of DE&I at an organization, but making people feel like they're belonging and that they're invited, not even into the room. Getting into the room, yes, it's half the battle. But if you don't feel like you have a voice in that room, or you're going to get the look of, what did you just say? That's leadership, man. Culture and building that inclusive culture of ideas and getting staff and managers to understand that we are no longer in a one note instrument world. That those days are long gone. We need new perspectives. We need new ideas to the table to battle this, because what we're doing currently isn't working. Attacks are increasing. The one vision, one solution approach, it's not working. And as you know, Danny, in cybersecurity, there is no solution that is bulletproof. As industry leaders and experts, we have to understand that while there's no one magic bullet to solve this solution, there's no one magic voice to solve it either. And because we're blending different solutions to solve different issues, from detection and assessments all the way through getting your data back, those all require different levels of perspective. And relying on one person or one voice to do that is not going to be a benefit for anybody. And once organizations realize that, the doors will start to open. How they realize that, we could spend hours and days talking about that. There was an article last year just on chief diversity officer burnout. They're being laid off. There's a lot of pressure there. It's a figurehead role. Help the organization's perception. Organizations need to prioritize this. The challenge I've seen is, we're going to be diverse. We're going to focus on growing women in the C-suite. It is diversity, right? There is, but that's one lens of it. We have to, that's a mono-diverse way of looking at things. We have to look at what diversity means to the organization and to the people we serve. Do your employees feel, yeah, everyone hires diverse? It's starting to become natural, and there's diverse audiences at every organization. But is it equitable? Is it inclusive? Diversity is just the beginning of it. It's making them feel like they belong, making it feel equitable and inclusive. I hadn't thought about belonging in the DE&I space until I started reflecting back growing up. I was born in Houston, so Mexican American. But when you met Mexicans, you weren't one of them. You met your American friends, you weren't one of them. And then when we went to Mexico, you were a gringo. And I think back on, man, how important belonging is to people. It's not just the DEI. space. It is like, ooh, I feel like I belong here too. Because it's very easy to feel like you don't. And organizations need to step it up, man.
I definitely agree with everything that you said there, Guillermo. But the belonging really came into my conscious. It was a DEI talk at the Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Center, FSISAC, here in Denver. And she was actually a guest on the show previously, Aisha Jamon, and she brought up the fact it's not only about bringing in those diverse people and experiences, but it's about retention. How do you look at retention? It's about belonging. And the analogy she used, and I've been telling this to everyone ever since, like if you're going to get a new home or rent an apartment, you go in there, empty rooms, you kind of have a mental image of, okay, I guess we'll use this room for that. But now the room is staged. Now you can say, I can definitely see myself here. I could, have friends over watching movies, games, etc. Now there is a belonging there. But the way she framed it is you're walking into an empty house. The entry to the house or going up to the house, you get a lot of high fives. Hey, welcome home, welcome to the family. But then you get in, it's empty.
Yeah. You and I have been in homes that are immaculate and you're afraid to sit down on the couch, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
belonging.
No, that's so true. I appreciate your insight about how we increase diversity, equity, inclusion. And it's hard because the stories that I'm hearing from young professionals or transitioning professionals, they're doing what the industry is telling them what to do. You need to get certifications or you need education. Some are doing them both. Some are choosing one side. But then now they have those requirements, but then now the doors aren't opening for those opportunities there. So how would you, help navigate young professionals? What advice would you tell them when the industry is telling them, hey, these are the two major requirements and certifications are pretty expensive. College education is expensive. And
Yeah.
who does that affect? Primarily minorities or groups of people that are coming from low socioeconomics. So what advice, because I get a lot of this and it's hard to really give them something positive.
It baffles me on a certain level, Danny, because you read about the number of roles open and unfilled jobs in cybersecurity. You read about the challenges that the federal and state and local governments are having with cybersecurity and filling roles. I do feel like my advice would be able to zoom out and zoom in, understand the macro impacts that the economy has had on people. What did the fear of a possible recession do? Well, people cut back. And cybersecurity was one of those things that experienced a lot of layoffs. And as companies start to rehire, they're looking for someone that's a Swiss Army knife of cybersecurity. They're looking for, a lot of times, they're looking for a unicorn. They're trying to do more with less. And it's coming down to an analyst, an IT guy, and a security guy all in one. And when you're going to school, you're getting your certifications on a very specific set, aligning your certifications, your passions, your interests, all. Don't forget about the soft skills. You cannot forget about the soft skills that are needed, right? Creative thinking, innovation, critical thinking, problem solving, all of those things are needed. But if you've been very intentional on the certifications that you're getting and go to the industries in that space that need those certifications, I compare it to when Facebook was on the rise and brands were advertising. You started seeing a lot of social media specialists. Even before then, you saw TV ad specialists. What happened to those roles? Those roles go away because that industry evolves. You want to be somewhat holistic, and that comes with your soft skills. That comes with being able to be a critical thinker, because now I'm not a social media strategist, I'm a marketing strategist. Social media is a tool. So I'm a cybersecurity expert. I have experience in healthcare, and because I've gotten trainings in this, healthcare and finance, but I can solve problems. I know how to think. So don't lose sight of how important your soft skills and your past experiences are. It is a hard industry. You have to understand that the hiring manager is probably not a cyber expert. They're a hiring expert. They want their jobs to be made easy. Their job is to hire people. So how do you go in, and they're the gateholders most of the time. How do you go in first? Is it from a cybersecurity? Like, this is everything I know, and probably 9 times out of 10, it just went over here with them? Or how do you help them understand, I can help your job be made easier because I like, how do you sell yourself? How do you position yourself and tell your story to that first initial hiring manager? That's going to be one version of the story. When you get down and you're talking to your manager in your interview, that's when you pivot on the story. And now you talk about your certifications in more detail and what you've learned and what you can bring to the table. Because he doesn't want to have to hire someone that he's going to have to handhold. He's got a lot happening, which makes it very hard for entry level roles. It makes it very hard for entry level roles. And our job as applicants, let's say, is to make our bosses feel, or future bosses feel, that their job is going to be made, their life is going to be made better because they hired us.
Soft skills are completely underrated in cybersecurity. And just the term, right? Hard skills, soft skills. I'm trying to ask people we need to change our wording associated with that. So the term that I'm using to replace soft skills are life skills, because that's what you need to be successful, right? That critical thinking, that creativity, being able to really understand your environment, and effective communication. If you need something, if you want to buy something, you're in a different part of the world, you need to have those true life skills for you to be successful. Guillermo, I want to pivot to the Latino Leadership Institute. That's something that my sister-in-law pointed me to, and that's how we initially connected. And just the mission is just amazing, because I think leadership training as a whole is very probably academic focused, I would argue. So you go to school and get your certifications in leadership and X, Y, and Z. But this one, I know, hearing from my sister-in-law talking about that they immerse you into the the Latinx culture, that sometimes we don't really understand our background and our histories. But if you could just give us a quick overview, going through that program.
Oh, it was a life-changing experience for me. When I applied for it, I wasn't working, and I also remember thinking, am I Latino enough to do this? Like, these are Latino leaders in the community and people that are doing amazing, big things in the community. Am I that? Like, I worked for an ad agency. Like, am I really that? And when I got my acceptance letter, I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And it was going back to like skills, the life skills, as you said, to not think about yourself in such a limited box. Like there's so much to who we are as Latinos. It does take a lot of peeling back the layers of it. And the first class we got to choose one parent, and we did a discovery on that lineage. I chose my dad, and I realized that his ancestor came from Spain way, way back
Wow.
in the 1500s as an indentured servant. And then after he completed his service, he moved to Monterrey. It really just got me to open up and understand, like, we stand on the shoulders of giants, man. Like, people that came before us have made huge contributions that we will never know. We've planted seeds back way back, and it really got me to feel like, man, this is where I come from. And there were a lot of different personalities in the LLI, and you see that
Right.
with Latinos in general. We're not a homogenous group. I feel that it helped me understand different perspectives because we hang out with people who look and think like us and have similar experiences. So being able to understand different perspectives, dig deeper into who we are, how we behave, why we do things we do. It wasn't just leadership in the academic sense, it was really diving deep down into like who we are as leaders. And we're natural born leaders that have been
Hmm.
coated in muck and clay and sometimes have a tendency to hide because we've been taught to hide. And one of the like takeaways from that was growing up, I told you there was not a big sense of belonging there. And I remember my mom telling me, like, now it's time to speak English when I started going to school. And it's their language, it's their country. And so you try to assimilate and you lose a little bit of that authenticness of who you are because you're trying to fit in. And you go out further in life and the years go by and you're still doing the same thing. And so the LLI really helped uncover like who we are as leaders within. And it really helped me shape my vision for where I could contribute. Like, I'm a marketer, I'm a corporate guy. And but what I got to see was there's more to what I can do and serve. And it boiled down for me was, how do I create a thriving community? How do I help create thriving communities? And that was the core. To create thriving communities, you need to create paths to wealth. Well, you create a path to wealth, and that's starting a business. Okay. And that's a lot of Latinos' path to wealth. And well, wait a minute. We're opening businesses at a faster clip than non Latinos, but we're not generating the same revenue. Okay, there's a problem, right? And the more I dug, there's $1 trillion, over $1 trillion at stake if Latino owned businesses were at the same, if it was an even playing field with non Latino owned businesses. And that really became like where my head went. And as I got further into what we're talking about now, is right now we're contributing as business owners, Latino owned businesses, a little over 800 billion to the economy. Now imagine a ransomware attack. What happens? What happens to $800 billion in the economy? We have to be able to protect that. We have to be able to understand that those threats are real. And that's why we're having the conversation now is how do we, going back to building thriving communities through entrepreneurship, You have to build resilient communities. And to do that, you have to build resilient businesses. And that a tool within that is cybersecurity.
Well, I love the way how you brought everything full circle back to the original topic, cybersecurity, DI, and helping Latino businesses. But the LLI and just that's an amazing story, and I definitely want to get Joelle here on the podcast to hear her story and her why, how she started that. It sounds amazing, a lot of great things. But to conclude our interview, any book that you're currently reading or just recently read, or any book that would resonate with, and it doesn't have to be cybersecurity, just anything that you're reading that would resonate with the audience.
A book that I read once a year is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And, we have different audiences that are probably watching this, but the idea of pursuing your dreams, pursuing your vision, and once you define that vision, once you put it out there, the entire universe conspires to help you achieve it. Like, to me, every time I read that book, I pick up a different lesson and a different story. That is the book for me.
I would agree with you 100%. It's been a while since I last read it, but it really resonated with me. Shared it with a bunch of former colleagues at the time, and it resonated with them. A personal dream. I think I was in the military, or a personal. Was it Personal Dream? Fantastic book. I'll make sure to include in the show notes. Guillermo, again, thank you for this amazing conversation. You brought up a lot of important topics, obviously in DEI, and help supporting our small businesses and protecting them from the adversaries that are out there, unfortunately trying to do them harm. But again, appreciate this, and hopefully we'll get you back on this show. Thank you.
Thanks, Danny. Appreciate it. It's great talking to you.